Hi, I'm Menaka Raman-Wilms, and you're listening to The Decibel from the Globe and Mail. If you've been following the Winter Olympics, you've probably seen Canada's women's hockey team play. They've won every game so far, often by huge margins like 12-1 or 11-0. So it's no wonder that our team is now playing for gold against the US. The big game will air Wednesday night in Canada, and though it might be a bit late to stay up and watch, when these two teams meet, the hockey is always exciting. The last time they faced off in the Olympics in 2018, the US took the gold. So, this time, Canada's looking to win it back.
This is one of the greatest rivalries in sport. There isn't any debate about that anymore. It is so evenly contested. It is so heated. There's such history there. It's steeped with so much emotion.
Globe sports reporter Rachel Brady is in Beijing covering the Olympics. She'll tell us about Team Canada's strengths, how women's hockey has grown, and who she thinks is going to walk away with gold. This is The Decibel. Rachel, thank you for being on the show. It's great to have you back.
Well, thank you for having me from Beijing.
So you've been watching lots of Canadian athletes over there, but you've been watching the women's hockey team in particular, and they've been pretty dominant and undefeated this entire run so far. What's it been like to be there in person watching them play?
Yeah, this seems to be a very special, talented collection of Canadian female hockey players. They have scored 54 goals through 6 games. So if the records are any indication, this is the hottest scoring team the women's Olympic tournament has seen. At this point, they have 8 of the top 10 point getters in the entire tournament. So 8 of the 10 come from Team Canada. They've had 15 different scorers. So they are putting the puck in the net any which way. They are pressuring teams. They are suffocating teams with their speed. It's just an entirely different sort of style from Canada. They are really playing sort of a positionalist hockey where they've got defenders crashing the net. They are just pressure all the time. So it's a really definite high speed, high caliber level of hockey coming from Canada.
Wow. And this is, again, it's a different Olympics because there's no real people in the stands. There's a smattering of people around there. There's some reporters like yourself. So how has that, I guess, changed the dynamic of being in these games?
Yeah, in fact, there's, a few hundred people, local fans, usually in most cases, and many of them maybe are seeing hockey for the first time. So it's definitely a different audience. It's not loud and rowdy like you would expect a Canadian hockey game to be. Certainly, inside Canada is what we're used to seeing. Yeah. And the one thing that really struck me when I watched Canada versus US in the preliminary round, and of course that always has such a fiery flair to that game, is it is such a shame that people aren't seeing this live, because this matchup is really meant to be seen and appreciated live and up close.
Yeah. It's I've actually been to one of the gold medal hockey games back in Vancouver in 2010. My sister and I went to the women's the gold medal game. It was fantastic, and I know what you mean. Like the energy in there was crazy. It was amazing. Who are some of the people that we should be watching out for playing on this team?
Yeah, on the Canadian team, well, certainly everybody knows the name Marie-Philippe Poulin. They know her as, Captain Clutch, and she has been every bit as billed in these playoffs. She scored a couple of goals in the semifinal game, which were just among, some of the most beautiful. Just this gorgeous sweeping backhand over the Swiss goaltender that was just signature Marie-Philippe Poulin creativity. Even some of her own teammates were saying, we see her every day. We train with her. We've known her for years, and we still shake our heads at, some of the skill level. One of the people that maybe Canadians are sort of getting to see, Canadians who don't watch the team very often, are getting to see sort of for the first time in these games, is Sarah Fillier, number 2 goal scorer in the entire tournament. Just a young player. She's a player who guns for the net right at the beginning of the game and can kind of break the back of the opponent by scoring super early in the game. That's kind of become one of her signature things. And she just shows that she belongs here, and she is among the very best in the world. And then top scoring, Brianne Jenner, always, a veteran of the team, big sniping goal scorer, beautiful slap shot goal in the semifinal. always reliable, and she's got 9 goals in this tournament through 6 games. So pretty special player as well. Okay. So it's a good group, as you might imagine.
So let's talk about the U.S. and the Canadian teams, because they are going to be meeting in the gold medal final on Thursday in Beijing, which is late night Wednesday in Canada. And this is a common gold medal matchup for women's hockey. These two teams meet frequently in that game. The last time was in 2018 at the Pyeongchang Olympics. What happened in that gold medal game?
They're always close, right? Those games are always close, and somebody always walks away literally in tears. There are a lot of tears at the end of that game on one side, and a lot of exalted cheering on the other side. Obviously, this is one of the greatest rivalries in sport. There isn't any debate about that anymore. It is so evenly contested. It is so heated. There's such history there. It's steeped with so much emotion in that game. And the first round between them and the preliminary round, the U.S. came at them with all kinds of firepower at the beginning, and Canada's goaltender held them in on that one.
During this Olympics, right? So the first time they met. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the first time they met this time. So, but you could see, I think there's always a sense of, this is what happened last time, right? Canada had a really hard time swallowing the fact that they lost that game in 2018. Marie-Philippe Poulin commenting on it this week, like, I needed to take some time off, actually, to get over that.
So how has the women's U.S. team been playing overall, I guess, this time? Like, what are their strengths? And then if we can compare them to Canada's, just to give us a sense, really, of where these teams are going to meet.
Yeah, their strengths have definitely been in creating offensive opportunities. So they certainly have had their share of shots on net. They have been challenged a little bit more than Canada has in terms of the score. The U.S. had a close game that was close for a large amounts of time against the Czechs, and then in the semifinal against Finland. So one could argue that the U.S. has actually faced a little bit more pressure. One could argue that the U.S. has been weathered a little bit more and might be a little bit more hardened for this game, but Canada's always ready for anything, and they seem to be, solely focused on taking the U.S. down and getting that medal back.
Okay, let's look at, I guess, kind of bigger picture with women's hockey here, Rachel, because, again, as you said, you've covered women's hockey, the Olympics, for a while, since Nagano in 98. That was when women's Olympic hockey made its debut. What was the state of the game then on a global level, I guess, and how has it evolved over time?
Like the sheer number of players to start at the grassroots level of girls playing hockey in Canada, certainly girls hockey has been one of the highest growth areas in the sport. Women's hockey at the Olympics, the inclusion in the Olympics has really given legitimacy to it and helped to grow it over the years. So, but it's had its challenges. It really, really has. They had the Canadian Women's Hockey League fold in 2019, which was devastating for a group of women who were not making a lot of money off that league, but it was a place to showcase their talent, and it was a place for them to play after university. Bringing a women's pro league together is just a constant point of conversation of how do you put these women on people's televisions more often? How do you put them in arenas and sell tickets for people to see them more often? Mm-hmm. And it's just become a constant talking point. And this would have been the time. This would have been the time to have them coast right out of the Beijing Olympics and into a really organized, sustainable women's league.
So I guess outside of the Olympics, like when the Olympics are over, where do most of these players play hockey, and how often do they play hockey? Can you go see them play?
No, you can't. Not at this moment. There's a league in the U.S. that has players in it called the Premier Hockey Federation, formerly the National Women's Hockey League. And so that has teams mostly in the U.S., one in Toronto. And then this other group that I was mentioning, the Professional Women's Hockey Players Association, it's these women, and it's more of a tour, right? It's more of a tour, and they pop up here and there. So you're seeing them. And then many of these players, of course, play university hockey in the United States, and some of them at Canadian universities. So they're not all together in one place where you can go and see them. So certainly, people are left looking, and their attention is short after the games, and they would like to see, they're only going to look so far for them to go find them. So it's a shame that there isn't a place where instantly you can look them up and say, where's the schedule? Where can I buy season tickets? And at this moment, you can't do that.
I mean, this sounds like it's not really a full-time job for people then. Like, is this something that these players can actually sustain as, I guess the question is, like, do they have to work other jobs in order to sustain their sport?
Well, most of Canada and the U.S. players are carded athletes, right? So they're carded athletes like Olympians are. So they receive money from within Canada to train. But it's not a livable wage. You're not making, what even a woman would make in other professional sports, like a tennis player or a golf player. Like you're not making what a professional golfer would make or a woman on a professional tennis tour. So we're a long ways off from that. And that's what women have been fighting for.
Can we talk about, I guess, the broader state of women's hockey as well? So hockey in other countries, like what would help them develop teams that are fairly competitive at this Olympic level that would challenge Canada and the U.S.?
Yeah, well, I talked to a couple of Swiss players at length this week. I talked to players from many of the other teams this week, but two conversations really stood out for me. Two women from the Swiss national team who have done everything you could have expected of them. They've come to they actually went to the U.S. They got scholarships to play in the U.S. That's how good they are. They developed in there. They've been playing with Canadian and American players. Like they're really, really good players. And the difference is Canada and the U.S. centralized and trained together for 6 months before coming here. Like some of these other teams were together for like a number of days. These two things are not equal. If you want to keep up with Canada and the U.S., you're just going to have to put more time and money and resources into developing players. I mean, it's that simple.
The situation with North American dominance essentially here, it brings up this argument that we see kind of repeated sometimes when the Winter Olympics come around about how maybe women's hockey should not be an Olympic sport because it's really only competitive between the U.S. and Canada. What are your thoughts on that argument, Rachel?
Yeah, it comes up every games. I can remember being in Vancouver and seeing this argument. Like, if they don't get better, they shouldn't be here anymore. And this is a problem that shouldn't be put at the feet of Canada and the U.S. It's a tough one for them. Are they supposed to just take it easy on their opponents? You want to see the best hockey, right? So should Canada not play their best hockey? If people were to look all the way back into the history books of men's hockey, it's similar, really, that there were dominant powers there too. And you have to let time pass and you have to let countries catch up. And the NHL obviously makes a big difference. Look how international the NHL is, right? So if there was a professional women's league in North America where the best players from other countries could find their way over to play regularly, that would make a big difference.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Like that would make such a difference that you would actually see these changes to this bigger question then. In your mind and from your research and your reporting that you've done, Rachel, is this a serious question of not having women's hockey in the Olympics? Like, is this something that's actually being considered, or is this kind of a theoretical thing?
No, I think this is something that people say and like to discuss because they tune into a game and they see Canada wallop somebody 11-0 and they say, well, that wasn't entertaining. That team doesn't even belong in the Olympics. Or they feel sorry for someone who, for a team that shows up and gets beat quite badly and says, oh, well, that can't be good for their program. When in reality, I ask a lot of these players as they were coming through the mix zone. I spent a day at practice talking to a lot of the other teams. And what you hear so much is, we're at the Olympic Games. This makes us better. It makes us better to be here. It makes us better to spend time on the ice with Canada. We wish we could be on the ice with them more. We can test ourselves against them. We can learn from them. They don't not want the opportunity.
Okay, so looking ahead to this gold medal matchup in Beijing, which is Thursday, but Wednesday night in Canadian time. What can we expect at this game, Rachel? What will you be watching for?
I can't wait to see the scoring opportunities, really, to see, is Canada going to continue generating the kind of offense from all angles that they have been? What will the goaltending be like at both ends of the ice? Will the goalies have to stand on their heads? Will we see an overtime game? I'm just really interested to see if what both teams have been able to do to their opponents throughout this tournament if they're going to be able to do to one another.
Okay, so because you've been following them so closely, Rachel, before I let you go, I do want to ask what your prediction is. So who do you think wins the gold medal here, and what do you think the final score of the game is going to be?
I do think that Canada will win this one. I would say it will be close again. I'm going to say maybe 3-2 for Canada. That would be my prediction.
Okay, 3-2 Canada. Okay, I guess we'll have to wait and see.
We'll see.
Rachel, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Before we go today, I have a favor to ask. We're still a new show, and if you've enjoyed listening, we'd love if you could help other people find us too, by sharing the show with a friend or on social media, or leave us a rating on your podcast app. Thanks for your help. It means a lot to us. Okay, that's it for today. I'm Menaka Raman-Wilms. Our producers are Madeline White and Cheryl Sutherland. David Crosby edits the show. Kasia Mihailovich is our senior producer, and Angela Pacenza is our executive editor. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.